Good, good. My name is Neil Padicone. I am Director of Green Economic Transformation at the New York Climate Exchange. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight at the New York State of Charge, an overview of the status of battery innovation, deployment, and circularity, brought to you by the New York Climate Exchange and our partners at Stony Brook University. So how many of you have heard about the New York Climate Exchange? Great. So just a quick overview. We are a very new Center for Climate Solutions that is developing a forthcoming campus on Governor's Island. We were birthed out of a RFP by the city to develop this space on Governor's Island, kind of taking advantage of the space right at the mouth of New York Harbor. And to serve as kind of a space for research, development, convening, and kind of the scaling of solutions for climate across different areas. And our focus really is on built environment, community resilience, financial solutions, energy and carbon management, including batteries, of course, oceans. We've got a few kind of tools in our toolkit, everything from education and training to research, tech incubation, workforce development, and convening. We are, I think at our heart, though, we are a partnership and consortium, of course, anchored by Stony Brook University. We have 12 academic institutions in our partner network, many in the 5 boroughs, but extending as far north as Rochester, as far south as Georgia Tech and Duke, as far west as University of Washington, and as far east as Oxford University. BCG, IBM, and Moody's as corporate partners, and about 33 different community partners, including labor unions, chambers of commerce, arts and cultural institutions, workforce development, and environmental justice organizations. And the idea is to really source solutions from across this network, this really global network, try them out in New York City and our forthcoming space on Governor's Island as kind of a living laboratory. And then based on their success, share them out, scale them to the rest of the world. And so batteries are, of course, a very central part of the climate conversation, not least because they are central to the electrification of fleets. They are central to the storage and distribution of solar and wind and other renewable energies. And so it's, all of you probably know this even better than I do, having, coming to an event like this, if you're not just here for the pizza. And so, we've got a really great conversation today of some real leaders, just pioneering every piece of the battery life cycle here in the 5 boroughs. And so it's really important, I think, for this to be the first kind of setting the stage of a series of projects that we're coming up with focused around what we're called projects closed circuit that my colleague Grayson is going to share in a moment. So just to kind of situate us for a moment, we're going to have some opening remarks from my colleagues Grayson and Wyatt and David Hamilton from Stony Brook University. And our panelists will present for about a little more than 5 minutes, give or take. We'll have some moderated Q&A, and then followed by some audience Q&A, some final announcements, and then grab a little more pizza afterwards. So with that, I will pass it off to my colleague Grayson Shore, our Circular Economy Fellow, who will take us through the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm going to give us a little bit of a crash course on batteries, battery circularity, talk a little bit about Project Closed Circuit as well. But before I do, I have to ask the obligatory icebreaker question here. Who in here, by show of hands, owns a battery? All right, it should be, I see, all right, everybody should be raising their hand, right? We have phones, we have computers, we've got Bluetooth headsets. I mean, I remember like 20 years ago, maybe I had a battery, maybe it was one of those old Nokia flip phones. But I think about today, the number of batteries that I own is rapidly increasing. So that's what I want to talk about first, is the mass increase, the amount of batteries that we're seeing around today. So if you look up at the top here, the screen, this graph, what is it showing? It's showing that battery demand has been growing year over year, about 33% for the last 30 years. Sales have been doubling every 2 to 3 years within this time, and the trend is increasing. Battery demand, as I mentioned, is skyrocketing, and by 2035, weekly battery demand will surpass the total annual demand in 2019. So 1 week of battery demand in 2035 will equate to everything we're using in 2019. This demand is being driven predominantly by EVs. You can see that in the blue here on the graph. And then second to that is stationary storage. So globally, there were around 3 million new EVs registered in 2020. There were 17.7 million registered in 2024, just a few years later. In 2023, North America produced approximately 3.6 million EVs, and the industry created over 200,000 direct jobs across manufacturing, battery production, and infrastructure development. By 2050, I think this is a really fascinating one. And by 2050, EV demand alone is expected to account for over 130 million metric tons of critical mineral demand. And that's about 90% of the total critical demand that we expect to be needed in 2050. 90%. It's crazy. So talking about critical minerals, batteries are heavily dependent on critical minerals. In 2023, battery share of global demand for critical minerals, the following were 85% of lithium, 70% of cobalt, and 10% of nickel. Catch up on my slides here. So when we talk about renewable energy, we talk about all the infrastructure that's needed for energy technologies. What I've highlighted here in red is showing that batteries are more dependent upon critical minerals than any of these other technologies, whether it be wind or PV, it be bioenergy or geothermal or nuclear. It's heavily dependent upon these critical minerals. So as demand for the critical minerals increases, so does the need for developing more mines for gathering this material. We may need as many as 283 mines by 2030 to meet demand for batteries. And this is something that's quite concerning given the long lead time needed to bring a mine online. On average in the United States, and just guess, how long do you think it takes to bring a mine online in the US nowadays? 8 years, I heard. All right. Just any other guesses here? You can just shout them out. 10 years, 12 years, 29 years. Somebody said 20. That was the closest. It's the second worst in the world. The global average is 15.7. To make that even worse, here in the United States, the number of mining engineer graduates in the US has dropped by 39% since 2016. So we have, at the same time that we need more and more critical minerals for the battery rollout, for PV, whatever it might be, we have less and less of the workforce to help us develop that infrastructure. So I think advancing a circular economy for critical minerals can assist with meeting this demand while also de-risking supply. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the emissions of an EV battery, rather the embodied emissions. So for an EV, as you can see up on the screen here, the black box is showing the portion of the battery, typically, this is on averages, its proportion for all of the emissions for manufacturing an electric vehicle. It can be somewhere between 40 to 60% of the overall embodied emissions for a vehicle. When you compare it to an internal combustion engine's life cycle, that mostly comes from when the vehicle is being driven. From an EV, again, it's mostly from the critical minerals, the processing, the sourcing of that material. The ICE vehicle or internal combustion vehicle, by comparison, requires about 70 pounds of critical minerals, while an EV on average needs about 460 pounds. So that's a 6x increase there. So shift gears for a second. How do we bring down emissions of EV batteries? I would posit that the circular economy is one of the solutions to make this happen. So enabling and scaling a circular economy for critical minerals can lower the need for new mining activity by around 25 to 40%, according to the IEA, by 2050, and reduce battery lifecycle emissions by about 20%. Jump forward here. So when I say circular economy, I've been thinking in mind, what does that mean? What is a circular economy? Well, in the context of EV, and specifically EV battery circular economy, it's kind of summarized by the graphic we have up on the screen here. And it's comprised of three things. We want to expand primary use. So that can be through such things like intelligent battery management. We might hear a little bit about that from Keith later today. We can also create second lives for batteries once they hit end of life. I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. And then lastly, we can support responsible recycling. Cool thing about a battery, one of my favorite things, is that it can be recycled after it can be reused. And the materials in these batteries are much more recyclable than something like plastics or other minerals or materials rather that are out there. So to dive a little bit further into battery reuse. So a battery is typically considered fit for use in a new EV as long as it maintains about 80% of its total usable capacity and loses no more than 5% of its charge per day when not in use. That's like if you had your iPhone or whatever phone you have, and it seems to not be charging up to 100%, may say 100%, but it's more like 80%. It's not lasting as long. That's kind of what we're talking about here, the degradation of the battery over time. So this initial phase of use in an EV is referred to the battery's first life. And this typically lasts for somewhere to like 8 to 14 years. After this point, an estimated 20% of end-of-life EV batteries will be viable for second life applications and could remain in that application for somewhere around 5 to 10 years. So what are those applications? Those applications can be things like what we have up on the screen here. So battery energy storage systems. A reused EV battery can reduce the cost per kilowatt hour for a battery energy storage system by about 30% compared to using virgin material and have about 20% lower embodied emissions. On a global scale, the supply of second life lithium-ion batteries could exceed 200 kilowatt hours by 2030. And the market value is estimated about $2 billion today, can surpass $7 billion by 2033. So this is where Project Closed Circuit comes in. This is where the exchange is focused on how to create a circular economy for EV batteries to reduce emissions and improve ethical supply chain resilience. In January, Neil mentioned a little bit about this a moment ago. In January, we launched Project Closed Circuit at the exchange with our partners, such as Dave over here. And we're based on three programmatic pillars. These three pillars are awareness building, solutions exchange, and applied urban solutions. Awareness building is essentially increasing the consistency of people that are thinking about and talking about battery circularity. So kind of like what we're doing here today. Solutions exchange is focused on developing communities of practice to share lessons about what battery circularity is focused on. This is doing such things as bringing together academic partners or private sector partners and exchanging specific ideas what we can do on batteries. And lastly, applied urban solutions is developing models that can be replicated among cities. I'm not going to read all the words that are on the slide here, but these are some of the specific examples of what the activities may be in each one of these blocks. So for awareness building, it's writing things like op-eds, it's bringing people together like we're doing here today. For solutions exchange, we're focused on activities such as building relationships with key stakeholders, creating a city-centered information sharing platform for data from fleets or whoever else it might be as well. And then for applied urban solutions, we're looking at things like developing regulatory guidelines, creating mechanisms where we can actually bring that data together, analyze it, and do something with it to extend the life of those vehicles as well. So with that, if you'd like to get more involved, you'd like to learn more about Project Closed Circuit, you can reach out to me, Neil, or Wyatt. You can also find out more online if you go to the Project Closed Circuit, Google search it. It's also on the exchange's website. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Wyatt, who's going to talk a little bit more about the context of battery deployment here in New York City. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those thorough introduction to batteries, battery circularity, and the context of Project Closed Circuit. My name is Wyatt. I'm an economic transformation associate. I work on Project Closed Circuit and tech incubation. And I just kind of want to paint a more broad and then detailed picture of battery deployment. So what you're looking at are a series of policy deployment scenarios and how they affect global EV deployment. These are reflected in the kilowatt hours in the batteries themselves in these vehicles globally. This is equivalent to the 3 million vehicles that were deployed in 2017 and the 40 million that are on the road as of 2023. Across all of these scenarios, what I want you to take away is that it's going to keep increasing at an increasing rate. And so this is a feedstock that we need to be able to handle, regardless of its reuse in a way that's ethically just and hopefully sustainable. And in tandem to EV deployment, stationary energy storage has also exploded. Not literally, it just metaphorically. This is the national picture of battery stationary energy storage for grid services. And this is at the end of 2023, including what was announced. So these numbers are a little bit old, but I want you to see that, again, it's growing at a very, very fast rate. And so there's an opportunity here. Although that these could be impacted by tariffs, batteries have a unique market solution that I hope Adam will be able to talk more to later. And then very specifically, putting these two things together in our specific context. Here you can see the kilowatt hours of EVs that are registered on the road in New York City. So solely the 5 boroughs, as well as the predicted and operational and planned capacity of battery energy storage. Again, this was at the end of 2023 for the battery energy storage. So Adam may be able to provide some updated estimates. But New York City itself has a 500 megawatt goal for battery energy storage deployment, and New York State has a 6 gigawatt goal. I hope that you can see that EV batteries can play a role in meeting that goal while minimizing the harm of this material. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to David Hamilton, who will speak more about Stony Brook University.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really do appreciate it. Thursday night, was talking to Jesse, wasn't sure who was going to make it out. If you're a football fan, there's a draft going on shortly, so hopefully the Giants make the right pick. If you're a basketball fan, the Knicks are playing. We'll try to get you out of here to watch that. I think Survivor's on later, so there's lots of things that you guys could have been doing, but you're here to listen to us talk about batteries. So thank you for that. A quick shout out to the Climate Exchange, Grayson, Neil, Wyatt. Thank you very much for pulling this together. The other speakers, thank you. Apparently, Adam is answering all questions and is going to have all data as we move forward. So be prepared for that. So I'm Dave Hamilton. I'm Senior Center Director of Energy Innovation at Stony Brook University. I oversee a New York State Center of Excellence in Advanced Energy, as well as the Center for Advanced Technology and Grid Integration Technologies. So, we touch on a lot of things, which I'll show you here, but batteries is a critical part of what we're looking at. And we look at the research aspect of it all the way through the deployment of it and how do we recycle it and what do we do with when we're done. But Grayson asked me to spend a couple seconds just talking to you about Stony Brook. So I'm going to take a step back and do an overview on Stony Brook for those who don't know who we are and what we do. And then I'll dive into what we do specifically on batteries. So this is really small and I'm really old. So I can figure this out. Stony Brook University, if you don't know, is a... No, I'm good. I can read it up there. I'm good. So if you don't know, Stony Brook University is the flagship SUNY school, and we're very, very much into engineering, but we've got life sciences, we've got health, we've got dental benefits. We have dental benefits. We do. We have a lot of students that do a lot of things, and we're excited by where we are and where we're going. We have a new president that's coming on board in August. It's the former dean of engineering from Princeton. So this is the first time Stony Brook is actually going to have an engineering president. And she has entrepreneurship and innovation experience. So there's a lot of exciting things that are going to happen with our new president. We have the climate exchange up there. As has already been said, Stony Brook led the proposal to have the climate exchange be built, and we're very grateful to all the members of the climate exchange who have taken the original vision from Stony Brook and pushed it forward. So thank you all for that. So I'm in the Office of Research and Innovation. So the Office of Research does what it says. Research, that's all the academics at the university. I'm in the Office of Innovation side of things. So what we do used to be called economic development. But what we really do is we look to drive and accelerate innovation impact through collaboration with industry and our academic partners. At the end of the day, what we do in my group is we partner with industry and try to solve real world problems. So we do that through a bunch of centers and programs. I'm going to talk about the AERTC and CEAS, the first and third bullets. But we also have a Center of Excellence in Wireless and IT. We have a manufacturing extension partnership to help manufacturers grow, and a small business development center, an internship program, on and on and on. We have a lot of economic development programs that are working with industry to help drive economic impact across the state. We also have a very, very deep partnership with Brookhaven National Lab, which is around 30 minutes further east from us. Most of the researchers in our buildings are actually joint appointments with Brookhaven National Lab. So we have access to the billion-dollar pieces of equipment they have over at the lab. Our professors are able to bring industry in there and our students in there to work with the lab. So a little bit about energy innovation, the stuff that I help oversee, all the smart people underneath me that get the job done. So we focus on all things energy. We look at that used to say offshore wind, but now offshore wind is a bad word. Then I was going to make it renewables, and renewables is a bad word. So we look at advanced generation technologies. At the end of the day, our job is to help find new and better ways for people to generate electrons. Whatever the administration says, we help them create the electrons. We do a lot in power electronics, smart grids, microgrids, energy storage, which is why we're here today, right? But not just batteries. We also look at hydrogen, and we look at alternative energy storage technologies. We look at alternative fuels. We look at decarbonization technologies in buildings, and we do a lot of work in advanced materials. Every single one of those other bullets has advanced materials in that, and that's really where our expertise is. So just want to throw this up there. At the end of the day, it's also about networking. It's about building an ecosystem. It's about having partners in the industry that we can help our industry partners go collaborate with. So from the Energy Center perspective, that's the who's who of energy in the Northeast. That's our advisory board. Those are the folks that we talk to on a quarterly basis and we do projects with. I'll talk a little bit more about our CAT, but actually, let me talk about that quickly now. So we have a Center of Excellence, which is the AERTC, and the Center of Excellence does really three things. It does advanced research, it does incubation and acceleration, and then we partner with industry to solve problems. Like the Con Eds and the National Grids of the world come to us, they give us money, they say, here's our list of problems, help us solve it. That's what we do at the Advanced Energy Center, which was this one. This is CEAS. It's the Center for Integrated Electric Energy Systems. It's actually a Center for Advanced Technology, a CAT. And so what we do with CATs is very specific industry projects, where the AERTC is longer road mapping and strategic planning. The CAT is about solving a problem for an industry partner and then moving on. So this is a bunch of logos of our industry partners at the CAT. So these are companies that we work with. These are companies that we have relationships with. These are companies that sponsor us. And these are folks that are on our advisory board. So at the end of the day, if you don't remember anything else I said, other than the fact that the Giants better pick a good person at the third pick in the draft tonight, we can probably get you in contact with anybody in the industry if you want to have further conversations with them. So in the Energy Center, it's a 50,000 square foot building. And like I said, we have research labs, we have incubator space. We have these laboratories. So we have things going all the way from laser thermal engineering through power systems, advanced controls, through characterization labs. Think is a multi-million-dollar microscopy suite where we're able to look at materials at a nanoscale level, and everywhere in between. So we have a lot of researchers in our building. They're doing a lot of really good work. They're funded by the national funds, national grants, state grants. We have research going on all over. But I'm going to pause there for a second before I dive a little deeper. Grayson and Wyatt already did a really good job, but I wanted to remind you while we're here, right? And that's about the battery circularity. So this is I stole this, so I'll give the shout out. You can see the logo who I stole it from, but it aligns very much with what Grayson's looks like. Right. So when you look at battery circularity, there's really three steps to it, right? We need to make the batteries, and then we're going to use the batteries the first time, and then we need to find another opportunity to use them a second time, and then eventually we're going to recycle them, and then hopefully use that to build them again, right? So there's going to be a constant loop. So think about that when you hear the other speakers. That is my 2-minute warning, sticking with the football theme. So think about those things as we look at the way batteries flow. And then Grayson also hit this, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on it. It's like when we make them the first time, we need to think about what we're going to do with them the second time. It doesn't make sense to build them the first time and then later try to figure it out, right? So these are the things that we all need to try to solve. So I mentioned our faculty labs. So these two are the ones that were real of interest for you all here today. It's our Power Systems Training Lab, and then it's the Institute of Energy Sustainability, Environment, and Energy. Those are the folks that work in batteries, and those are the ones I'm going to talk a little bit about quickly here. So the one on the bottom right, Esther Takeuchi, she's got 150 patents in batteries. She is looking at fundamental research on how to create a battery using non-rare earth metals and thinking about how they're going to be used in real life. So I am not even going to pretend to understand what all these are. They gave me some slides on what they do, but the critical aspects of what they're looking at. So in this particular one, Grayson talked about how a battery starts to degrade. Part of that has to do with the electrodes that are inside the batteries. They stop working. So we're doing research as to how to regenerate those electrodes and then reuse them. So again, it's a way of making a battery more efficient and more effective. They are also looking at the how a battery actually works. So we go to Brookhaven National Lab, and we can, it used to happen was you take a battery, you took a picture of it, an X-ray, and then you turned it on, and then you turned it off, and then you took a picture of it, and then you saw what was different, and you tried to figure out how it went from point A to point B. Now we can actually go to Brookhaven National Lab, connect it up to the billion-dollar light source, and we can put an X-ray on it while it's running, while the battery's running. And we can actually see in real time what's happening in a battery while it's running. And that knowledge helps us put together a better battery. So they're also looking at a lot of next generation lithium-ion batteries. One of the critical ones here is on the far right. They're working with Mercedes-Benz and other car manufacturers to extend the operation of batteries. If we can make the batteries last longer in the primary, then we don't have to worry about as much the secondary, right? And the longer you can extend it, the better the world is. And then the last one, they are actually doing research on water-based battery alternatives. So at the end of the day, it would be great if we can get rid of lithium-ion batteries. It would be great if we could have batteries that are based on water or based on sand or based on some other type of technology that won't catch on fire, will last a long time, and won't degrade, and all those other great things. Those are the things Stony Brook is looking at. We're trying to figure out what the next generation of batteries will look like. Just wanted to hit a couple quick industry projects that we've done, and then I'll hand it off. I won't spend a lot of time here. We worked with a company, Biocom and UTS, where we actually took a Tesla battery and tried to figure out on the company's behalf what they can do with it afterwards. We built some protocols, we built some systems, and they were looking at like construction sites, or when you're in the highway at night at 2 in the morning and you think you have no traffic, and then you pulled over to one lane and there's all those bright lights shining on you with the diesel generators. Can you use a Tesla battery, a reused Tesla battery for that? So we did a project for a company helping them do some customer discovery there. We're doing some work. Slow is over there. He's doing some work with the Office of Naval Research on lithium-ion batteries, life, and reuse. So we're doing a lot of testing, and we're supporting the Navy on that, because the Navy is looking to solve these problems as well. We work with a company called Brentronics, and we're looking at microgrid technologies. How do we take batteries? How do we use them in microgrids? And looking at the primary life and the secondary life of that. So again, it's another real life application that we're pursuing. And then this one is one we're working on right now. It's a company called Novell. They have batteries that are the size of a big screen TV. They look to mount them inside of in office buildings to cover loads inside the building on the customer side of the meter. And we're currently testing those batteries for them now. So again, these are solutions that hopefully will find alternative uses for batteries, and hopefully will extend the use of the batteries. And our preliminary research that we do helps these companies move forward. I am going to skip over these for a matter of time and say thank you and hand it off to the next speaker. I'll be around later for questions. Enjoy the really smart people that are going to follow. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Keith Kerman, the Chief Lead Officer for the City of New York and a Deputy Commissioner at DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. On behalf of Mayor Adams and our Commissioner, Lou Molina, thanks for listening for a few minutes. I listened to Grayson's first 5 slides, and I thought I was in a biofuels conference, and I go to lots of those. But electric is very promising. I do want to first mention our former Fire Commissioner, Laura Kavanaugh, is here. Give her a round of applause. Who really both locally and nationally has done some of the really important, critical work on fire safety, especially around the e-bike batteries. I'm going to come here and pitch car batteries and EVs. But if we don't solve the fire side on the smaller batteries, then eventually that's going to impact our ambitions on the larger program. So one advantage I have over Stony Brook is most of my slides are fun pictures of cars. So you don't have to think too much about all this kind of professor. Oh, it was fun. It was great. I'm a Patriots fan, so you know, I'm thinking about tonight too. First, who are we? We're the city fleet. We're the largest municipal fleet in the United States. 30,000 or so vehicles, adding 10,000 contracted school buses, police, fire, sanitation. One fun thing: everything you're looking at there has a battery in it. We do a lot of sustainability announcements out of DCAS. We announced in 2015 that we would achieve 50% greenhouse gas reduction by 2025. We are here in 2025, and we have achieved 50% greenhouse gas reduction through a diverse approach. They are limiting my time, so I can't explain all of it, but it's electric batteries where you can, electric vehicles, it's efficiencies, hybrids, and other efficiencies, and then it's biofuels, getting rid of diesel fuel. The most recent announcement we just made at the auto show, and the auto show is still going on at the Javits Center, so you can go check this out, is this week that we would take all our enforcement vehicles at the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and they would all be electric in 2 years. And that will be 3 years before rideshare vehicles, Uber and Lyft, have to be electric, and 8 years before the whole city fleet, light duty, is supposed to be electric. We hear a lot about efficiency these days, whether it's real efficiency or purported efficiency, but we believe batteries have an enormous role to play in real efficiency by very well-conceived local law by Councilwoman Gail Brewer and many others. We have to publish on the efficiency of the city fleet. We just published our latest report, check it out, but batteries play a huge role in actual efficiency that actually means doing things better and cheaper, not just wrecking things. We've been recognized as one of the greenest fleets around in the country. We're going to explain why. This was our Earth Day post. If you know of a fleet with more than 21,531 vehicles running on alternative fuels, don't tell me about that because that would discourage me. All right, I explained our plan. I do want to mention, we go into some of the risks that Grayson mentioned, because, electric batteries are not a panacea, and they are not without emissions, and they're not without issues, both fire issues and raw material issues, and limitations on functionality. I will explain a little bit about that. We have a 3-part strategy. We think this makes sense for the transportation industry: efficiency, biofuels, electric. They go together. But I'm here mostly to talk about electric. In October 2023, Mayor Adams signed a local law, 140, that we would electrify the entire city fleet by 2035 for light and medium, by 2038, or when available in the marketplace. And we may need that research to actually do that for heavy, emergency, and specialized. This is where we are now. We're at 5,400 electric vehicles currently operating. I believe that is the largest electric fleet in New York State. We should be about 6,000 by the end of this year. We're closing in on 20% of the city fleet has a plug on it at this point. Pictures, first electric sweepers out in the world. 3 years ago, I told you we had no electric pickups or vans. That's 25% of the city fleet. Today, we have 500-600 and more on order, and very, very well received. Garbage trucks. One issue about garbage trucks, that's a nice sanitation 10-yard garbage truck. We have about 400 garbage trucks that do not plow. We can electrify those. Most of our garbage trucks, as I'm sure you all know if you're New Yorkers, plow. So there's not a plow-eligible electric vehicle on this planet. And I always like to remind people what the energy requirements are. If I asked any of you to take a walk for 3 miles with me, if you thought I was a reasonable person, you might do it. It's a nice day. If I said, it just snowed 3 inches of wet snow, would you take that same walk and push a shovel? Most of you would say, I'd rather not do that. And you think about how much harder that would be. But that's what the battery would have to do to plow. We were looking at law enforcement. On electric vehicles. We announced the taxi announcement this week. We're going to be making some more announcements very soon on that. We're looking at EV trucks. As all of you know, we now are under the Advanced Clean Trucks rule of New York State. I've spent a lot of time on that. But since starting January 1st, every manufacturer is expected to sell, it's 9% right now of all trucks have to be electric for them to sell diesel. We are put batteries in fire department equipment, including ambulances. Every ambulance has an alternative power unit and a plug in it today. Really interesting story. While you have a battery, and you have a plug, and you have a charger, you don't have any time to plug it in. When do you plug in an ambulance and not interrupt the work of the EMTs? So one of the things that's actually was done under the commissioner and is now more or less rolled out in scale, 350 of these are operating today with another 150 on order, is solar panels on the top of the ambulances to try and get some of the juice automatically all through the day without interrupting the operations. Along with the mayor's office, we are also in Executive Order 23 pushing on the off-road side. There's a lot of emissions that comes with off-road equipment. We operate 5,000 off-road equipment pieces, tractors and snow blowers and snow melters and front-end loaders, and I could just keep going on, tar kettles. What about the emissions for those? To get all this done, you have to have a lot of charging. We are the largest charging operator in the East Coast of the United States with 2,250 ports and growing. There's some pictures of our chargers. We have to address some of the issues of emergency power. So we are looking at battery storage for charging. Those are solar carports. I'm going to show another picture of that in a moment. This is just how much EV charging for transport is growing in our city fleet. It's doubling every year. But battery storage is a really big issue for us. We are the largest investor, we used to be, now the military is, but in these portable, off-the-grid charging networks, these solar carports. It's battery storage. If you come to the municipal building at City Hall, you'll see one's been there for almost a decade now. We've been investing in some of these portable batteries to have them in vehicles so you can charge them up in an emergency. And we were a great big potential, maybe not investor in a company called FreeWire. It's going to have all this great fast battery charging, but it's a reminder of the risks of this industry. We were going to buy a whole lot of these, and I hate to say we actually have a few of them, and then FreeWire went under and abandoned the product. And any of you would like one of those, we will have them outside. We're going to give them out. So one last thing I want to talk about, and we don't have your analytical chops. I'm a town fleet, but we do have some analytical capacity and some ability to comment in this industry. We track 29,000 vehicles live at what we call the Fleet Office of Real-Time Tracking. Every single agency, we are tracking what they're doing 24 hours a day, and it's a lot of data. And we did a report that got some nice attention a few years back. We looked at hybrid vehicles and gas vehicles against their EPA ratings to answer the question, do they meet their EPA ratings? None of them do, gas or hybrid, but who's better? And we actually found that hybrid vehicles are closer to their EPA ratings than gas vehicles, or hybrid vehicles are better than advertised in actual use. And so we are now, and this forum is a little too early. We're hoping to publish on this topic in about 4 weeks at the end of May, but I'm going to give you a few teaser slides. We're looking at the same question about batteries. Are electric batteries performing closer or not to their EPA ratings? And a couple other questions. What happens in weather? And I'm going to show you a slide. It's pretty dramatic. And how do they degrade? Right? So I just bought an electric vehicle, but I leased it. Now I leased my gas car too. But then I bought it. So now I leased an electric vehicle. So now I got a question in 3 years, do I want to buy that? And the big issue is going to be that battery, right? If the battery's getting 300-mile range now, and in 3 years it's like down to 260, I am not buying that car. I will return the lease, get something new. A big question. So we're looking at the question of battery performance over time and over seasonalization. See those little squiggly lines? That's seasonalization. It's a tremendous impact. Cold weather is hugely impacting batteries in actual operation. I'll show you. This is the slide of our tracking of the city fleet on electric batteries and seasonal by month. It's kind of crazy. I actually think it's more dramatic. I've told them to check it because it seems too dramatic. But there's no question that there's an enormous seasonal impact. And that goes into all kinds of operational questions, including we don't have a plow truck now, but even if you did, it would have to be a plow truck that could operate not in June, that could operate in January, which means you probably need twice as much charge and battery capacity as we think we do today, and we can't meet what we need today. But it's interesting looking at these questions of how these batteries perform And it's going to be hugely impactful as this industry tries to move forward. Just a couple other thoughts. One, I'm sure all of you follow this industry a lot, and so we all think we understand the benefits of it, but there is a national debate happening in this country, and we really better engage it about things like electric vehicles, and most people do not have an understanding of them. We published something, literally a children's video called Batteries Included, to try and explain the benefits of electric vehicles. But I do encourage you in all your work to actually go pitch and educate and sell. The good news, we have all already figured out batteries and charging. We're all dependent on it. Everybody in America, whatever your politics, has figured out batteries, charging. And these cars are actually great cars, and they'll sell themselves if you introduce them. But do not assume people understand or recognize the benefits, because we may all, but huge percentage of our kind of country does not. And the last thing, I invite you all, if you want to look at more trucks and have some fun in the park, on May 15th, we offer a fleet show. We've been doing it for 36 years at Flushing Meadow Park at the Unisphere, where the US Open is. It's free, it's all day, there's food, there's vendors, there's announcements. So if you're anywhere nearby, please come and join us. And with that, thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Kling. I'm a department manager for e-mobility at Con Edison. So I am not a battery person. Before I start, I will double down on the shout out for the DCAS Fleet Show. It's one of my favorite days of the whole year. It's awesome. You should all go. It's really fun. So as I said, I'm not a battery person, but really thanks to the organizers for pulling this together. It's a really important topic, and it does overlap, as we've heard, pretty directly with the transition into electrification of transportation. So what I do at Con Edison is I run a team who supports infrastructure programs, whether that's incentive support or engineering and pre-design support and kind of hand-holding to help the adoption and implementation of EV charging stations, whether that's for e-bikes and scooters, personal cars and trucks, all the way up to medium and heavy duty vans, trucks, buses, and things like that. So our goal is to try to get as many chargers out there in the world to help move the needle even faster on electric vehicle adoption. And so far, as you've seen from some of these charts, that's working pretty well. And well, again, I'm not a battery expert, but what I want to talk about today is a really prevalent use case for batteries that we are starting to see that kind of melds that stationary battery source as a resource for these mobile batteries that are driving around all over the streets. So as we see customers are starting to buy EVs, we're starting to see a lot of plugs go in the ground, and we're starting to see fleets and customers figure out not only how to operate these chargers and just operate these fleets, but how to optimize them and how to make them more cost efficient, how to change their load profiles so that they're smoother, how to reduce their operational costs. So we're starting to see kind of this market get a lot smarter. And, you know, thanks to folks like DCAS who are like figuring this out. And one of the ways that they're doing this is really using technologies like batteries, often paired with things like load management software, to put in with their EV charging stations to help either smooth out the load, shift to off-peak times. You can use them, I'm sure we'll hear from Adam, exporting them for like additional value streams. So we are starting to see this in our territory, whether it, you know, applications like a large public DCFC station that has a lot of load and it's public, so they're not sure when, you know, the cars are going to come, so they need to manage that. It could be a fleet that has a lot of vehicles and they have a lot of charging needs, and they can actually manage and optimize when the charging is going to happen. So we are starting to see a lot of this technology come in, and definitely just want to kind of throw these out there for the audience discussion so we can talk about how this use case in particular is really interesting and like is starting to evolve. And I think as we see the technology start to grow and the economics and the use cases and like the leaders at the city kind of demonstrate this, those curves are going to keep going up. I'll put in a few pitches for the different ways that Con Edison supports things like this. So we have infrastructure programs where we help pay to actually get the electricity to those charging sites. And we also have load management incentive programs that actually help pay for the batteries themselves or the software that goes with it. And then we also have managed charging programs. So if someone is using a battery like this to, avoid the peak in the afternoon, we'll actually pay them for doing that. To not charge at off-peak times or to charge overnight. So a lot of really exciting things that are happening in this space. I'm just going to sprinkle those out there. And then I think I'm passing it on to Jesse. But thanks for your time and hope for more discussion.
Is everyone still awake? How many people know what New York City Economic Development Corporation is? Raise your hand if you know what it is. All right, it's more than half. So my name is Jesse Weiss. I'm an assistant vice president at EDC. I work within our green economy team. About a third of my work is related to batteries. So I'm definitely not as expert as some of you in the room, but I want to share kind of what EDC does on our energy storage, both on the financing side and supporting deployment of innovative technology of batteries. So for those who don't know EDC, we are the city's economic development arm. We work to make sure that the economy in New York is vibrant, inclusive, and globally competitive. We do a bunch of different things, but I'd say these four are a good way to think about it. So one, we're building neighborhoods, literally the housing, the commercial, industrial space, even retail space. We develop a lot of that throughout the city. We are focusing on growing our innovation industries. A lot of the work that I do, running programs to support sectors that we really believe in are going to be a huge potential for New York. So life sciences, tech, and the green economy. We deliver infrastructure. That's everything from ports and ferries to logistics hubs. And then strengthen business confidence. We have a whole economic analysis team that is looking at trends, looking at real-time data on the economy. To give you a sense of the scale, I think the average New Yorker maybe not understand the scale of EDC, but we have about 225 properties across the 5 boroughs, manage about 64 million square feet of real estate. Under construction right now are about 170 projects worth $9 billion, either under construction or starting construction soon. We've invested over $1 billion in the life sciences sector, over $200 million in the offshore wind sector. And then on the initiative side, all the programs we run, over 400 programs, really focused on expanding businesses, growing jobs here in New York. So what do we do on batteries? There are really 2 things we're doing to accelerate the energy storage and really particularly the battery market. You all probably know what energy storage is, but just it's helpful for me to understand and categorize these things. Capturing energy at one side, using it at another time. There's the mobile that can be used. Those a lot of times are replacing diesel generators. A single family house can have a battery, commercial scale, and then really the big utility scale. Obviously, this is beyond just the EV world, which we've talked about a lot, but just the energy storage world. This is kind of how I think about the 4 categories. So EDC, one of the things we do is finance a lot of the battery storage projects. In particular, we have the IDA, which does a lot of the financing. We offer sales tax exemptions and mortgage recording tax exemptions to allow to kind of go against a lot of the upfront costs of a battery, both on the purchase of the equipment and installing it. So we finance a little over 36 projects to date, representing about 350 megawatts of energy storage. I don't work on the financing side, but the work that I do is really on the programmatic side and focusing on the regulatory front. It's one of the barriers to the battery storage market taking off. Run a program called the Resilient Energy Studio. It's run for a couple of years now, and really it's an 8-month program focused on energy storage technologies. How do we deploy them? How do we help startups both with technical and regulatory support. We work really closely with the two main regulators of battery storage here in New York. We work with the fire department and Department of Buildings. And so we'll work with them to identify some catalytic projects, ones that we think will really scale up and have potential to scale up in New York. And then we support them over those 8 months. The goal of the project is not really just to help those projects that are participating in the studio, but really to inform larger changes to city policy, to code, to operating procedures. So it's more streamlined for any project that wants to deploy in New York, not just the ones in our studio. We provide monthly technical assistance. The teams have access to the fire department, the buildings department to talk through some of the regulation side of things. People are learning from their peers. And beyond that, we want to make sure we're making this knowledge public. We have public events, public reports to really talk about the studio and some of the policy reforms that can take place. So to give you a flavor of some of the ones from past rounds, we did actually a pilot with Electric Fish down at Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn. This was a containerized battery paired up with an EV fast charger. It was both charging EVs and also participating in demand response events, so providing over 40 kilowatt hours to the grid. Right now, working closely with 9DOT, they have a site up in the Bronx where they're actually charging up some of the mobile batteries. We hope to deploy some of these mobile batteries at the construction site that EDC has down in Lower Manhattan. And then work with Orenda. They were doing an energy storage simulation at the Navy Yard to really plan for their large-scale deployment in New York City. So I'll just close to just talk about what's next for the Resilient Energy Studio. You see a couple different applications here, but the next Resilient Energy Studio is really focused on what I'm calling batteries for buildings. So there's not a ton of deployment of batteries in buildings today. I think by my count, either a dozen or less batteries in buildings. There's more at the utility scale, the types of projects that the 9DOT works on, which you'll hear about in a second, but not a ton really for individual buildings. We all know we live in a dense urban environment in New York City, so there's a need to integrate batteries in our buildings. We don't have a lot of open space, and land is at a premium. And batteries are really an untapped potential to help buildings comply with Local Law 97. They reduce electricity demand charges, allow for resilience for these buildings. But there are challenges, and that's some of the things we're working through in the studio. There are a limited number of products that are actually approved by the fire department today at this scale. About 20 to 500 kilowatt hour systems. There's not a ton of them today, but more and more are coming online. Obviously, permitting is complex. A lot of the regulations are geared towards the utility scale, and there just hasn't been as many at the building scale. So really working through to make sure that the regulations are right sized, they make sense for the risk that they pose. And then lastly, these are just newer technologies. So the city, these are new for the city, new for the regulators, they're new for the real estate industry. I think just getting people comfortable with whether it's the lithium ion or some alternative chemistries, just a new field. And this I will actually close on. This is a depiction of the regulations in New York. And this is a simplification, but the process is pretty intense. A lot of you all know probably the UL certifications you need to get even an industry standard. Once you have those industry standards, you're going to go and work with the fire department to get your certificate of approval that you can actually use and deploy this product in New York. And then you're going to have some site-specific requirements. The point of this is not to say there's too many regulations. It's really how do we make these regulations work? The regulations make sense for the products. We're working really closely with the buildings department and the fire department to really go through these and see how these regulations can fit for different scales of batteries. A lot of people, I think in the industry will say, the regulations are too intense. There's too much. I can see both sides of it. And I say, we want to make sure there's no emergencies. There's no catastrophic fires, because if there's just one catastrophic fire, not just on the e-bikes, but at a building size or utility scale, it will really just hurt the whole industry. So I think the fire department is getting more and more up to speed on these things. The buildings department is getting more and more up to speed on these things. And I hope in the next couple of years, more and more we'll see these batteries deployed. And I'll close also by saying, part of it is on the regulators, but also the real estate industry is
conservative, and these are new products for them. Financing is still in the works. So I don't think batteries for buildings are going to scale up in the next 1 or 2 years, but I think the future in New York, given the potential, given our goals around climate, I'm really excited about batteries in buildings. So thank you, and I'm happy to chat afterwards about any of the regulatory nitty gritty.
Hey everybody, my name is Adam Cohen. Thanks for inviting me tonight. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of a company called 9 Energy. We're based at the Urban Future Lab in downtown Brooklyn at the NYU Tandon School of Engineering. I usually tell a little bit of a story about myself. So I'm a physicist by training, and then I was a postdoctoral appointee at the Department of Energy. I met my co-founders there. We started sharing a desk in 2018 at the Urban Future Lab, and we've since expanded to about 75 people. And we've raised about $500 million to deploy battery energy storage, primarily in New York City. But I don't usually go backwards. And so I added something to my title here. I started my career in science at Stony Brook University, so I thought I'd give a little pitch. As a 11th grader in high school, I was invited to work in a lab for the first time in the materials research lab at Stony Brook. And Jim Simons, who I think has since given $500 million, I think one of the first things he did was sponsor a high school internship program. So that's where I got my start, and I've since. How well you did was that we got it. They also decided they shouldn't have high school students live in the dorms over the summer. That summer. So I thought we'd start on a beautiful Thursday night with a little game. 9 it's based off of the name of our company is based off of a game that you can look up later on Wikipedia. But we thought we'd play a game of connect the dots. So on the left-hand side, I have the Flatiron Building. On the right-hand side, I have supposed to be an everything bagel, but more like a sesame bagel here. And besides being iconic New York images, how would we connect these? So I'd say the connection is water. Until 1882, when Thomas Edison built his first Pearl Street plant and lit up Broadway and became the Great White Way, there were no buildings in New York City greater than 6 stories. That's because we weren't that lazy. We didn't have elevators. It's that we didn't have water that could naturally flow up more than 6 stories. And so if you were on the 7th story, the 8th story, you wouldn't have sanitary water. You wouldn't have any fire protection. And so electricity and the advent of water towers, which were old coopers who built things for alcohol storage, started building these water towers to the top of buildings. And that's what led to skyscrapers. So a 7-story building in 1890 was considered a skyscraper. And the right-hand side, we get all our water from upstate New York. That's why we have the 6 stories or 60 feet. That's all the water pressure we have. The water of New York City is supposed to be the best. It leads to chewy in the inside, the bagels that we have. And so water and electricity are the story of New York City. These are enabling technologies, not just the electricity, but water movement are what led to the city that we have today. So here's a picture of New York City today. If you look out, all you see are water towers. Once you know that this is the kind of the canonical image, the iconic image of New York City, you can't unsee every time you look up, you don't see skyscrapers, you see water towers. There are tens of thousands of these everywhere. They're inside of buildings, they're on top of buildings, they're cascaded throughout buildings, and they're still built in the exact same way they were built in 1885. And so our story of energy storage is that energy storage is an enabling technology for our city. It's going to change the way that we use and consume energy. And so the state plan is to have 6,000 megawatts of energy storage in the state by 2030. Probably need about 17,000 megawatts by about 2045. And that's on our path to have a 100% clean energy grid. And so energy storage, we want to make as ubiquitous as water storage, as water towers are today. So 9 Energy builds energy storage projects using the technologies that we have today. We're trying to spread them across the power grid in places where it's needed the most. This is one of our first projects in the Northeast Bronx. That's the fence. I'm going to show you behind the fence in a moment. But what we do is like to be integrated into the community. So we've been working with the elementary school right across the street to tell the story of clean energy and the Bronx. We've been working with them for about 2 years. And actually John will be, my colleague will be going up there on Saturday. I was there last Saturday. We're actually making a glass mosaic with all recycled materials for the bottom part of this fence. And so we love getting into the communities and telling our story. And so what you see at our site is the solar panels that we install, and then we'll get behind what the rest of it looks like. And so this is a picture of myself, my co-founder David, with our batteries. So the battery banks are to the left, all the switch gear that connects to the power grid are on the right. The solar panels are straight ahead. And actually, if you look straight in between, that's actually, if you recall 911, that's the 911 building. It was a PSAC 2, I think, up in the Bronx. It's kind of the most impenetrable building, I think, in New York City. And the decast panel was 100 foot by 100 foot by 100 foot cube, I think. And our site is making the power grid of that area, the Northeast Bronx, more resilient and more reliable. So 9 Energy, we scaled up over the last decade or so from getting a small $500,000, now it seems small, $500,000 grant from the Department of Energy when we were a small team to have over $500 million of investment today. We are still based out of the Urban Future Lab, where we've scaled up from a small number of team members to over 70 today. We've built 2 projects early on in 2020, and now we have 50 late-stage projects and many more in the queue. This market is growing rapidly. And we have 6 commissioned projects, 21 megawatts of projects on the grid right now. And some of my team is actually going out to a site right now to commission a 7th one. So this is what a site looks like. I'm going to show how it's built. It just takes, a morning, pretty easy. This is I think it's like an 8 megawatt site. This is part of it. This was a morning. I started around 7 a.m. and it ended around noon. Easy peasy, build a battery project. So in order to build this project, which takes, 6 hours, takes about 3.5 years of work to get there. And then probably after this, another year of commissioning and finalizing it. So I want to talk a bit about that project. This is what it's a set of boxes that are sitting on the power grid. These are what we call community batteries. We'll talk a little bit about that. But their job is to charge up when the grid has lots of extra availability, typically overnight when the grid has lots of headroom, power is cleaner and cheaper. Then it waits, just sits there, holds the power. And then it puts the power back out, typically on the hottest summer afternoons when the grid is overstressed. We have peaker plants running and power is expensive. That's what a battery does. It's kind of like, it's not that different from charging your phone and using it later. But what its job is to do is also take that compensation for that delta in value when it's getting cheaper energy and then offsetting dirtier energy. It's trying to make the power grid more affordable. And where do we direct those savings? It's to actually make the electricity bills for disadvantaged communities be reduced. And so I want to continue playing this game. So the left-hand side and the right-hand side, these seems like they're opposites. They don't work together. We're trying to build an intermittent solar and wind renewable power grid where we don't necessarily have the power exactly when we need it. And at the same time, we're probably going to 2x or 3x the load of New York City and New York State over the next 3 decades with EV charging and heat pumps and other beneficial electrification. A battery is the connection from changing the way that we inject power into the grid and how we use that power. We're trying to shut down the dirtiest, oldest peaker plants. We have power plants that are 50, 60, 70 years old that are maybe only run 300 or 400 hours a year, but they're hugely polluting and they lead to places that we call Asthma Alley in New York. But at the same time, we have to make our grid more reliable. And so our connection is batteries. We have huge infrastructure needs, not just electric, but also transportation and rising costs. But at the same time, one of our main goals is energy affordability and having more community power. And so our batteries are designed that delta in value. Every time we put power on the grid, the compensation that we get, the actual savings flows directly and automatically to as a bill credit onto low-income households in New York City. And so I like to call this the everything battery. It's doing lots of things for the power grid. The ingredients are the strictest safety standards in the world, providing localized relief and a compensation mechanism from Con Edison for doing that. It's on the path to clean power, and it's making energy more affordable for the families and households that need it most. So that's what we do as a company, but we love innovating and thinking about new things. So how can we also do that with an electric car fleet? And so with work with Con Edison, thank you, and NREL, Wells Fargo, and Incubator Space, we took a fleet of electric vehicles with our partners at Revel, which is an all-electric car fleet, and we made the first V2G site in Brooklyn. And so this does the same thing with a set of vehicles that wouldn't be used on a hot summer day. We charge them up, we wait, and then we put the power back out. And so we have that project operating in Red Hook. And then with our friends at the Clean Fight, hi Molly, and EDC, we've been building a mobile energy storage project. And so this is actually the same site. We took off on our rendering, the mural, but we're building a car charging site. But what we're not going to charge cars at, we're going to charge diesel generator replacements. And so we charge up these vehicles, I guess we'll call them, these trailers from a company called Viridi, which is based up in Buffalo. We, instead of waiting, we move them and then we use them where we would have used a diesel genset instead. And so we take this bagel, this is sort of everything battery that we were perfecting in New York. We're working on the safety regulations, working on the compensation mechanisms, working on the market model. And I like to think, how can we package this up and have this happen, not just in New York, but everywhere? Maybe it's not as good as the bagel you can get in the corner store, but we can take those ingredients and we can send them out to everywhere across the United States, across the world. And so I saw a survey in like 1985, before Lender's Bagels figured out a way to freeze them and send them all to supermarkets all around the store. Something like 85% of Americans had never heard of a bagel. Now you can buy a bagel in every corner of America. And so how can we make that happen? So I did contact Stony Brook University last week, and I found this picture, which I didn't have. And so there's me as a 16-year-old, and we're gonna go back to a different thing now.
I want to maximize time for audience Q&A. We have some prepared moderated Q&A questions here, but I'm going to start off with one, and then we'll jump into audience Q&A. How does that sound to y'all? Yeah, excellent. All right, let's do it. So, Keith, this one is for you. However, any of y'all are welcome to answer this one as well. So, Keith, what are some of the operational benefits and risks of large-scale battery operations?
Okay, so on the benefit side, tremendous maintenance improvement. And we've published on this, you can Google it, with Axios published, and we're getting 60 to 70% maintenance reduction for all electric vehicles. I'll tell you the truth, not for plug-in hybrids. We really don't get it. But for BEVs, it's tremendous. Obviously, it's zero emission. Things like, for emergency services, think about hot summers, right? Used to be for police, for fire, for other vehicles, tremendous overheating issues. You don't get that, not just with the all electric, but even with hybrid vehicles, that all kind of disappears. Enormously beneficial. And of course, you're getting the fuel savings, which is tremendous. The challenge side, and there are a lot of challenges. I talked about plowing. Plowing is the biggest one for us. Everyone wants the garbage trucks to be electric, but they're all plow trucks, and they're not going to be electric anytime soon unless Stony Brook's got something secret great. Anytime soon by, 10 plus years. 10 is really itself being generous. And so, it's partly why we do renewable diesel. Things like towing, things like work processing. So for large commercial and fleets like ours, getting from point A to B is the easy part of things. It's when you're at B and you're work processing, parks, forestry, shipping, fire equipment, fighting fires, sanitation, compacting, and plowing. It's all these work processing functions. EVs are really not well set up to do that yet. And that's where, for a lot of these functions, that's where the fuel is. Think about a Parks Department forestry chipper truck. Getting to the tree might be 2 miles. Chipping at the tree is all the noise, mechanical, exhaust. That's where all the work and the emissions is. We can get the truck over there on an electric battery, but that doesn't solve the emissions issue. You're going to have to figure out a chipper that can do that. So those are some of the limitations that we see.
That was awesome. Any mics down here? I want to say that I have too many mics. All right, let's hit this one. Go. Can you all hear me now? Excellent. Anybody else want to tackle that question? Yeah, well, David.
Yeah. The other thing is you have the vehicle challenges, but then the other part of it is you got to charge them, right? And so the system, all the electric systems charging electric vehicles very hard. They're not set up to do it yet. And that's one of the reasons it's good that Con Ed is here and Con Ed is doing all the stuff that you're doing. Because what I've been told on Long Island is charging an electric vehicle when it's charging is basically 3 times the load of the house that the car is sitting in the driveway. So you think about the transformer sitting on the pole that covers 7 houses. If 3 of those houses have electric vehicles and they charge them at the same time, that transformer is in deep trouble. So the whole electric utility side of things to get ready for electric vehicles is a challenge.
Yeah, I'll piggyback. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And a really exciting thing, if you're like a utility regulatory nerd, which I pride myself on, but who knows, is that utilities are actually starting to entirely shift the way they plan and design and build our systems to be ready for this transportation, heating, beneficial electrification loads. There's a massive regulatory proceeding. We're hoping to get some kind of regulatory direction in the next couple of months, where we'll actually be able to start building now long lead items at our substations, feeder runs in the South Bronx, in Hunts Point, in East New York, places like that, so that as this load comes on, we'll actually be ready to take it on and people won't have to wait. So it's a great point. And there's some really exciting stuff happening on that.
Amazing. Well, I want to jump in some of the audience questions. So with that, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll pick on folks. You have conveniently a mic in front of you. You'll press the mic button to turn it on and then make sure to turn it off once you're done speaking. If you could introduce yourself by name, and if you want to share your affiliation as well, that'd be great. I saw a question in the back. Yeah, David.
Hi, I'm David. I'm the co-founder of a company called Pop Wheels. I know some of the folks here. I feel like I'm at the United Nations right now. This is a lot of fun. We are in a moment of extreme uncertainty right now on supply chains, on regulatory incentives, on policy at multiple levels. I'm curious how, whether that's from the city perspective, from private enterprise perspective, from regulator perspective, how is the kind of increased uncertainty changing or not changing the way you operate?
I was hoping you were going to ask us a question about bagels, but you went right for the hard question there. I love it. Thank you, David. Any takers for that? Anybody want to tackle that question first? Yeah, Allison.
Keith? Yeah. Sure. So few things. One, we're under a lot of established local law regulation to do what we're doing. So that's local law 97, that's local law 140 to reduce, it's not working. Oh, I have to be closer to it. To local law 140 to electrify the city fleet, local law 97 to reduce emissions. And so, fortunately for us, New York City has been aggressive on these issues, has codified it. And, we're all fortunate to be living in New York State and New York City and pursuing these initiatives. I would have said that last year, and it's just as true this year. The second thing I'll say, since efficiency is such a buzzword of our last 4 months, electric vehicles save you money and reduce costs. In fact, while I don't actually appreciate the Office of Management Budget's approach to this topic, most of our electric vehicle initiatives have actually been budget reduction initiatives. We've been reducing the overall budget by cutting the fuel budget, cutting the maintenance budget, extending the life of the vehicles and buying the electric because you can, right? So, if you care about efficiency and aren't as focused on, having a viable environment to live in a few years, all right, well, it's also your choice, at least on light and medium duty vehicles, which are most vehicles. I would not argue that on heavy duty yet. I think heavy duty vehicles, that market is not as mature. But on light and medium duty vehicles, if your focus is efficiency and cost savings, all right, 60, 70% on the maintenance side, enormous on the fuel side, and the vehicles will last longer so you don't have to replace them. So there are other ways to approach these issues. At least right now, we're moving forward on all fronts.
I was jumping to add to that and say, prior to joining the exchange, I was working at Amazon. And one of the great things with the EV fleet that we were building out was that it was more cost effective. Not only did it reduce our emissions for delivering a package, but it also made delivering that package less expensive. Also, a lot of the drivers loved the EVs. They're more comfortable to drive. They're more fun to drive. They're also kind of cute vans if you've seen the bread loaves on wheels driving around. So back that up from the data that we were seeing at Amazon when I was there, totally matches what you were just saying, Keith.
In fact, I heard a rumor that the White House had an event promoting electric vehicles just a few weeks ago.
And I mean, hey, Dave, your technology, it's resiliency, it's infrastructure hardening, you can use all the right buzzwords for what you do. It's fire safety. So being in New York is good. Like you said, New York City is still moving forward. New York State is still moving forward. All of my centers are still funded. We may even get more funding to help work with companies like you. So just keep moving forward.
Well, one other thing that I heard, other than changing the messaging, which organizations will decide if they want to change their messaging, but one is lean into the fact that New York is a leader on the regulatory front. And whether it's looking at other parts of the country where climate is looked down upon or their states are making it hard, really attracting the talent. Universities, companies, New York is a place to do business. We're attracting the best talent around climate. Climate is a long-term challenge, long-term opportunity beyond Trump. And so making New York City a place where people want to move to bring their products, their smarts, I think hopefully that should be a way to help withstand any backlash we're getting against climate technology.
I'll pile on, but yeah, I mean, from a utility that's regulated at the state level, we are going to follow New York State climate laws because that's where we are. So hi, Pop Wheels. And then I just another like data point on this for EVs, especially this technology is great and it's going to happen anyway. From the school bus side, the city has a school bus mandate, so does the state. There's been a little bit of noise, a little bit of pushback there, but we're seeing the early adopters in New York City see, massive savings on their operational costs in the early days of using these buses on electric versus diesel. So just the numbers are going to speak for themselves. The drivers love them. It's a great experience. So I think that's going to start. It's just a business case rather than anything else.
So as an entrepreneur and a co-founder of a company, when you choose an industry that's heavily regulated, energy, healthcare, you're building hard things, actual things in the ground, not software, not consumer product. Policies and regulations are a key part of building that business model. And whether you have, a supportive Washington, a supportive Albany, a supportive City Hall, or a not supportive version of it, those are a key part of the formula of figuring out a business model that works. And that's true 4 years ago. It's true now. It's true 4 years from now. And so when you choose a problem and trying to find a business solution, it's not something on the side. So I think you have to choose good technology, to good products, good fits that have that as a core piece of it. And I think, I'm not New York, well, at least the business that I work on, most of the regulations are specific to the state or the city or hyper local. Those are what make the business work or not. Of course, there are I'll call global parameters. The cost of a product is going to be impacted by tariffs if it's not made in the United States. If there's an investment tax credit or not, will have a big impact on the wind, solar, storage industry. But those of macroeconomic and microeconomic and macro policy and micro policy, those all fit into what you're building. They are the core part of building a business in the energy space.
I'll lastly add, before we jump to the next question here, the dynamic, you mentioned tariffs, and we're putting all this massive amount of tariffs on Chinese imports. We're 100% reliant in the US on graphite imports from China for batteries, whatever else it might be. The critical mineral that's the largest input by weight into an electric vehicle battery is graphite. So certainly I think there's some of these other dynamics David had mentioned that we're in this kind of interesting time. We're also going to see some disruptions to the battery supply chain. And I think that also may incentivize more domestic production, but also the circular economy of harvesting the materials that we already do have in our country and utilizing that for the creation of new batteries. All right, let's jump into the next question. Yes, over here, please.
Yes. So thank you for presenting. So given that we have the municipal elections this autumn and the state elections the coming autumn, what would you recommend? So in terms of policies, say for the next council, the next mayor, and next governor, what would you recommend that they prioritize, say, if we really want to bend the electrification curve even further upwards, as you indicated?
Excellent question. And I'm going to repeat part of the question just because it was a little bit hard to hear. If you were like mayor for a day, what would you do?
I mean, the next election, what would you recommend
For next election, what would you
to
recommend?
the next mayor and the next governor and of course the next city council?
Awesome. Great question.
I know what 9 is going to say.
What am I going to say?
This one when you an election, but so the tax incentives I was mentioning that EDC participates in to allow a lot of these projects to happen, these require EDC to be involved, assess every deal. The state could make these by right. So anyone could take a sales tax exemption if you're bringing an energy storage project. I think that's something that the legislature needs to pass. It's up there. So anytime you want to do a battery project, you could get that tax exemption.
Just want to note a fossil fuel generator in New York has had a sales tax exemption for about 40 years, and solar and wind have as well, and battery storage is waiting.
Any other takers on that question? If not, yep.
I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I think, one thing that I think is you're trying to, especially in like nascent markets like this. So, and maybe battery isn't nascent, but early stage markets where you're trying to build businesses, startups are trying to make things happen or like have made things happen and are trying to continue. I think and we're seeing this as well in like, medium and heavy duty, like electrification. It's really hard. The technology isn't always there. People are trying to figure it out. I mean, the one thing that's really important is like consistency of approaches. If you have this like whipsawing back and forth, that is really damaging. If you have, incentive support or policies that kind of go up and down, that can be very challenging and unsettling for businesses. So I don't know what the right numbers are, but if you're setting targets or putting out, pathways just to try to keep them like steady. So there's no like market cliff or like uncertainty. I think that's something that we've seen, especially in like the EV charging business.
The city can be a role model for how to install safely, and reliably energy storage and electric vehicles as we've seen over the last decade and a half. Energy storage is a growing market in New York City, and it's not that well accepted. It's still a lot of education that needs to be done. The city, after Hurricane Sandy in 2012, we took a hard look at what our electric infrastructure needs were and where they were lacking. And they recognized that distributed energy resources like energy storage were a huge part of the solution to making our grid more resilient. And they started putting the policies in place, including looking at the safety features of battery energy storage, how to build a really robust program for approving technologies and approving sites. That said, the market has only started developing over the last 2 or 3 years, and only a handful. I showed, we have our 6th and 7th site coming up. We are the biggest developer in New York City. That's not a huge number. We have dozens more to come, and we are talking to community members. We're talking to neighbors. We are doing a lot of education. In 2012, in the same regime at City Hall, they decided to build a fuel cell, which is a natural gas powered generator, which is walking in City Hall Park. And my company has also built fuel cell projects in parts of the grid where it was overstressed before there was battery energy storage tariffs and programs. Tariffs meaning utility rate programs. Sorry. And I think the city, as a huge owner of land and a huge user of electricity, could point the way for how to build trust with neighborhoods in building energy storage projects. And so if I were mayor for a day, I would build this program where we can take pieces of city-owned land in parts of the grid that need more support, more oomph, to build these projects to make them open for energy storage.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. All right, we have time for one, maybe two more questions here. And I'm going to take both. Actually, I'll do two questions. I'm going to take them both at the same time just to maximize time. And we're going to have time after this as well for enjoying some more pizza, some more drinks, and we'll have the space for about another half an hour. So feel free to come and chat with our awesome speakers as well, one-on-one with your questions. So let's take those two last questions. I'm going to take one from each side of the room. So how about the gentleman in the blue suit here, and another question? Let's do, I'm gonna, if you can shorten them, let's do all three. Exactly what I was saying. So we'll do you, ma'am, and I think I saw a hand over here. Yes, in the white as well. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, please.
Okay. My name is Alan Steven, working CEO of Energy One Solution International. My question is, how long does it take to get a permit for a lithium-ion battery in New York City? And are we looking at different chemistry, which are less depending, for example, on China and other countries?
Hi, Melissa Jourdain with H2M Architects Engineers out in Long Island. I'm leading our fleet electrification program, trying to build our capabilities there as well as our energy efficiency. Long Island seems to have a lot of reluctance to try and, electrify, or as far as battery energy storage, there's a lot of moratoriums out there trying to build out utility scale battery energy storage. I just wanted to know what your teams are doing to maybe try and convince the community to adopt more of these technologies.
Hi, my name is Moza here. I'm a student at Hunter. It was mentioned that the new plan for batteries coming out is to make them with sustainability in mind. But what's the plan for batteries that are already out that weren't made for that? And how effective are those strategies right now? And how could they improve?
3 great questions. So just to briefly summarize, how long does it take to get the approvals, community engagement, and lastly, about the batteries that were not planned with end of life in mind? What do we do with those? If I got that last one correct. Excellent. Yeah,
I can take that.
Adam, please.
So you asked how long it would take to get a permit. There's about 24 approvals that I need to build an energy storage site in New York City. So when I'm going to try to build a new site, the first thing I need to do is get a piece of land. And so I'm either buying a piece of land or renting a piece of land and getting a long-term option agreement so that I can see if that site works. And so the first thing I have to do is get approval from Con Edison. And so this is maybe a 6-month process where I put in, engineering diagrams, how it impacts the grid, and I'll get a result based on how much I have to pay to connect in a certain area. I've had things that are $300,000, $3 million, $30 million. And, so the power grid of New York, what is the con in Con Edison? Consolidated, right? So New York City has, really 80 different power grids. And they were all stitched together over 50, 60 years before Con Edison became consolidated. And so if you're installing something in northern Queens or southern Staten Island or the Northeast Bronx, the power grid is different, has different voltage classes, different redundancy standards, et cetera. And so depending on where you connect high tension, low tension, it can have different cost structures. And so you need to understand, that's the first part of seeing if the project works. And if you can check that box, the next step is doing your full engineering and making sure that site works. So it's environmental and et cetera. But then you're going to the fire department, you're going to the Department of Buildings, you're going to the Office of Technology and certification and research. But first you have to pick up technology, a product that was already certified by the fire department. And so before I even start, I need to have selected a vendor who's gone through about 2 years of back and forth by doing all of the UL certifications, but the UL certifications aren't enough to install something in New York City. The fire department does their own independent review of that product. The list of products isn't very long. It's on about 2/3 of a piece of paper that have been approved in New York City. And that's because we live in a dense urban environment and we want to have the most robust standards in the world. And when you build that, it comes with a set of requirements for that product of what I need to engineer, what I need to install. And then they're doing a site-specific review of the water spray system, of the fire alarm system of that project. And they're doing a similar sibling review at the Department of Buildings. That's before I've applied for my building permits. And so there's about 24 reviews. By the time after I sign that lease agreement, it's about 2.5 years before I'm putting a shovel in the ground.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Adam. So the other two questions, anybody want to take the community engagement? And
I'll take the Long Island one. So
let's do it.
I say hi to Rich Rich Human when you see him. So we work with H2M a lot at Stony Brook. So yeah, Stony Brook is a piece. Stony Brook, Long Island is a piece of work. The people there are a piece of work. They want They are. I live there. I'm allowed to call us that. We are all a piece of work. We want everything, but we don't want anything in the yard. We don't want anything that's visible. We don't want anything that may catch fire. We don't want anything that's going to make a noise. We need to educate everybody. We need to let people know that the chances of a battery energy storage system catching on fire and causing some catastrophic damage is significantly less than a house catching on fire and burning to the ground. All the stuff that is in a house that will pollute the ground is so much worse than anything that's going to happen with a battery energy storage system. So at the end of the day, it's about, we need to educate the community leaders. We need to educate the government folks. But to answer your question for Long Island, the critical thing is New York State is coming up with fire safety laws for battery energy storage systems. I think those are coming out on May 7th, May 8th. There's some big webinar thing. So once those rules come out, then we, the group, anyone who's an advocate, can start going in front of some of, the government folks and say, we're going to comply with this, or this is what this means. Right. So Stony Brook as a state entity, we're not allowed to lobby. We're not allowed to say, yes, energy storage, let's do it. But what we can do is we can take the information that comes from the state. We can do white papers. We can do analytics. We can do modeling, and then let other people connect the dots. And we are going to take a more active role in battery energy storage systems on Long Island so we can start pushing them forward.
On the fleet side, I'll just explain a couple of things. One, just on fires. In 10 years of doing electrification, we've had about 3 either electric vehicles or 1 charging system have fires. We've had 3 city vehicles burn up that are diesel in the last week. So, not for nothing. We posted on that a little while ago, the actual stats, but we've had a whole set, for whatever reason, of diesel equipment burn up, and that certainly had nothing to do with electric, and no one was calling for a ban on diesel vehicles. And then the other thing, I'll just say, yesterday, it's a fun day. I spent a long time in the field with the police department and with police officers and police officials. And we started talking about electric vehicles. And, in a conversation that is not public, they all love them. Right. And they're all asking me how I can get them one. Oh, give me up your RAV4. I'll take the Mach-E. And, I love the Blazer. Give me the Blazer. Where am I going to charge it? It really is true that they'll sell themselves. But a lot of people have never operated an electric vehicle. My wife and I just bought one in December, and I'm pretty sure, because we had to go out to Orchard Beach so my wife could drive it. She'd never driven an electric vehicle before owning one. And most people have never driven them. Get them access to them. And then it's not an unfair thing to begin with a hybrid vehicle. We did. We didn't begin with all electric vehicles. We began with hybrids and adopted thousands and thousands of them. And you didn't have to deal with the charging issues, and you were just saving money and getting resiliency. But it was an introduction. While we're doing a lot on, say, law enforcement electrics, and we're going to announce something more on that very soon, the main thing we're still doing in the police department is buying hybrid police cars. Right? Most police departments do not buy hybrid police cars. For us, the hybrid police car is non-negotiable. The only question is how many EVs can we do at this point? So I do think that hybrids, early non-emergency EVs, where you're just focusing on saving money, you're not testing the waters. If you push a big electric truck initiative as your first thing with somebody, that's probably not the best way to go. But these things can help argue themselves. I have never placed a person in a Mach-E, in a Transit, in a Lightning, and not had them love the vehicle. Never.
Thank you, Keith. For sake of time, I want to make sure we have some time remaining for some just informal networking and chatting out in our break area here. Jesse, Allison, I was curious if you had any last words, just as the 4 of us had a few words in this last bout. So no pressure. Excellent. All right. Well, let's say with that, we'll just give our speakers one last round of applause for sharing their insights here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.